welcome and thank you so much for coming out today. Another new cohort of students. Many of you have already had students semester after semester, and for that we're very grateful and appreciate your efforts in supporting our students. Anna is an apology today. She's been one of the she's unfortunately acquired the dreaded logie that everyone's getting. I'm recovering from, and a few have said they're just coming through that experience themselves. So want to acknowledge Anna and all the work she does in running her final field placement students. I want to thank Crystal for all her efforts. Crystal has done such a great job looking after final placement with Anna that they've now given her the honour of also supporting first placement with me. So I'm really grateful, spread across a lot of areas of work. Please welcome, come in. There's a sign-in sheet. If you haven't signed in, just really value if you could do that sometime through the afternoon. But yes, and we've also got Paula, our Master of Social Work, and a whole lot of other things. Professional and practice industry engagement, Paula, who will be joining us very shortly. She's still tied up in a meeting, I believe. That's everyone from our perspective. Oh, it's not working. Okay, so I don't know if you experience the same as I do every time I have the privilege of coming to work. It's actually not very hard to do when I come into this environment and I smell the gum trees and hear the life and activity of nature around me. It's a real privilege to work in this environment. I've worked in the city and I've worked in all sorts of other environments, but this is special. And so I want to acknowledge that this land is unceded Kaurna land. And I want to acknowledge that it is here because of the generations before who have cared for and tended and found life in their journeys here on Kaurna land. And I want to acknowledge their ancestors, those past, the current leaders and elders, and those emerging. And I often look at students and think, are you one of them? And hope that their journey on their land here is also as privileged as I find it. One of the greatest dilemmas Anna, Crystal and I have had every time we do this session is how can we pack it all into a palatable few hours. So hopefully today it's going to be clear and helpful. If there's questions, please stop and ask. Put your hand up or indicate in some way. And we'll be delighted to support anything you want to understand further. So we're looking at an overview of field education. For some of you, it's very old news. For others, it might be really critical. And I always find there's something I didn't realise, and I've been doing it forever. So hopefully you'll have one of those moments too where you know this was helpful. We're looking at the supervision model, roles and responsibilities, supporting students during placement, assessment and feedback. This has been evolving quite significantly over the last semester and into this coming semester. We're never quite satisfied, and perfection is always the goal, and we're always aiming to polish that more. So assessments have definitely changed dramatically, and we saw the positive impact of that in this last semester that's just occurred. When I say positive, it might not have been positive experience for the student, but it did affirm that we're actually improving our way of operating, and that's what matters. We want students to be fully successful and truly successful. Managing challenges and student concerns, it seems to be, you know, the price of every day of coming to work. And while I really, really appreciate the pain of supervisor and student, the fact is we're human beings and there are always going to be challenges and concerns. And so working out together a positive way forward is important and I find rewarding. Then we're going to just have a quick review of the website that we have for agencies and supervisors as a resource hub, in case you haven't come across that. So I just realised I need my drink. Trying not to let that cough come. So before I continue, I should just point out there's tea, coffee, and someone has kindly raided some biscuits from some cupboard somewhere. So we've got more than our usual, so do enjoy them and just get up and help yourself whenever you're ready for tea or coffee. The bathrooms are just up one flight of stairs, down the left corridor, and then left at the last corridor, and you'll find them. So just feel free to duck out. There's a lift to that floor if you need a lift. Welcome. We'll keep going. So ASW does a lot of the hard lines for us. So it does make it easy on one hand because we don't have to make those rules. So the requirements of ASW is that students do a minimum of 1,000 hours. Over 2 placements is the norm. It can be over 3 in certain circumstances. I say minimum because some students need a little bit longer to demonstrate their skills. And while some students mistakenly think, I've done my 500 hours, I'm going, it's like, no, you haven't been successful yet. So just to reinforce that, there's a variety of learning experiences across these 2 placements, and the placements cannot be the same as each other. So if you're working in one field and doing a work-based placement, you will actually have to go to a different place to get a different experience in your other field placement experience. The other point that I think is really critical to reinforce is that no placements can be observational only. And sometimes, sadly, students never get past that observation stage. And so we need to manage that very quickly. If within the first few weeks you're seeing that they're not going to transition to be able to be independently doing things and they're just still observing, that's when we'll need to step in and make some quick decisions for the sake of the student. We'll talk more about that later. So placement organisations provide a learning opportunity that facilitates students to develop social work skills. Sometimes that's really hard, other times it's really obvious. If you're in DCP or SA Health or Women's Safety Service, it's all very obvious this is social work, born and bred work. But if you're in a school's environment, finding social work can be very tricky. Inside of any placement, students can presume we have assessed that there is social work learning to do and to understand. So we do thank you all for your continued support of our students in your workplaces. As per your workplace would want anyway, it is important that we have a safe learning experience and environment for students. Why do we note that? Because it's not always the case. I could probably presume quite easily that you guys are definitely providing a safe and supportive learning environment. Your commitment is clear, your experience and understanding is clear, but it's not always the case. And we need supervisors to be accessible. That can be interpreted in all sorts of ways. Well, I'm always here, they can interrupt me and ask me any questions whenever they want. However, students might not feel that way. And so we need to actually work with them to help them understand, yes, I'm very busy, but I am always here for you. Or let's lock in 15 minutes twice a week or something like that to help build that sense of availability to the student. Students come with all sorts of ideas, so we need to not presume and to lead that student into a safe space. Supervisors provide social work supervision, social work qualified agencies. You all need to be a minimum of 2 years fully qualified post graduation, and yeah, that's for the social work supervisors. Now this is the one Anna's really good at and I hate. So let me get this right, because I'll start it wrong and go off track. But you've got the record here. We have now tiers of how we operate, and it's really just a systems thing. So tier 1, social work supervision, the student is requiring 21.5 hours per student of supervision. Who provides the supervision is what changes. So in tier 1, agency provides the one-on-one social work supervision, and the university provides the group supervision. Tier 2, same deal, the student must have 21.5 hours of social work supervision. The university provides the social work supervision because there isn't a social worker at that site, and the university provides us group supervision as well. Tier 3, and you'll know who you are, you provide all the supervision. So 21.5 hours is provided in one-on-one supervision for 11.5 hours, and 5 2-hour supervision sessions as a group. The one-on-one must always outweigh the group. So if it ever changes for whatever reason, all make-up supervision should be one-to-one because it needs to be the overweighted number of social work supervisions. Yep. Okay, how is it monitored? So agencies manage that inside of their space. Students manage that inside of the timesheet. So university supervisors or agency supervisors will have a allocated weekly meeting with students for their supervision. The student writes that into their timesheet. So attend placement, 1 hour supervision, or attend placement, 2 hours group supervision. So that's how it's monitored. There's also a document that the student is meant to be filling out It's just an ASW developed document that says they've had supervision on X date, discussed this and that. So they must have that documented and signed off each week, the whole timesheet, and then at mid-placement and end of placement, those documents are read very carefully. This semester we did actually pick up some students who had managed those documents incorrectly, and they actually had to catch up hours and supervision. It's a electronic timesheet. It's as simple as, and all they need to do is pop in the hours and it automatically tallies everything up for them. Some students do it by hand, which you have to question why. It's not allowed. We also ask supervisors to make sure every week that they're either citing and signing or by fortnight signing, but they must be signed. And there's still students who have outstanding timesheets, can't be signed off for the semester because their timesheets aren't signed. Yep. Can you just can you put that into the mic so that it's recorded and everyone hears?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So the supervisor that's signing off on this has to be, it's just one person, it's someone with a social work background, or can be just the person supervising the student?
Yep, site supervisor, whether you're a social worker or some other role. You're the one providing instruction each day, monitoring practice, etc. Mm-hmm. You don't need to be the social work supervisor. So yeah, they are the ones required to sign off. You've seen the student come, you've seen the student work, you've seen the student leave each day.
So just the supervisor?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yep. The only time the difference between supervisors who are not social workers and supervisors who are social workers is usually just the requirement of social work supervision. That must be done by a social worker. ASW says so. So otherwise we value anyone who's supervising students. I'll let you.
Thanks, Rose, and thank you, everyone. So we've just talked about the different supervision tiers before and who is involved in each. So now I'm spent a few minutes to talking about the different roles that are involved in the placement and also their responsibilities as well. So before we get into everyone's responsibility, quickly introduce the key roles that you may come across during the student's placement. So first of all is our agency field supervisor. So if you are the agency, I imagine many of you who are here today probably is the agency supervisors or yeah, you did it before, right? Yeah, so the agency supervisor is based in the agency, and if you are the qualified social worker, so you have to provide the formal social work supervision, which include the critical reflection and applying the theories to the practice and professional ethics and so on. So that is the requirement to meet the placement for the students. And if you are not the qualified social worker, your mainly role is doing the day-to-day monitor the students' participation and also create the learning opportunities for the students. So we call it AFS at the short name, but actually it's the agency field supervisor. So either you are the social worker or not, you still, your role is still to monitor students' learning. And the second one is about our UFS. So UFS is University Field Supervisor. So this is staff member from the university, and it's definitely a qualified social worker and who is responsible for the both individual or group supervision of students as required. So if you're an UFS or you are work with an UFS, so the UFS definitely need to be provide the formal social work supervision, and which include like the critical reflection I mentioned before. And the third one is our UFA, so which means University Field Assessor. So this is a Flinders University staff member as well, who is qualified social worker, definitely, and responsible for all the field assessment and academic judgment on students' progression in the field education topics, including first one and also the final one. So which will occur at the 3 points during the whole placement, including the initial placement meeting, which will be resumed 10 days before the students commence the placement, and also the mid-placement meeting and the end of the placement meeting. So UFA will be the first contact person between agency, UFS, or AFS, and also topic coordinator. So if there is any concern or question arise throughout the student placement, feel free to contact the UFA first at the first time, and then so we can see how we could like manage the case. And also the next one is topic coordinator, which is provide the academic leaderships and oversee the field education, including assessment and achievement of learning outcomes. It including the monitor students' progress towards these outcomes in collaboration with agencies and UFA and UFS as well. So the role requires providing guidance and also making the decisions on student progress. So this is for topic coordinators. For example, if students would like to require 5 days in a whole week instead of 3 or 4 days, so then they need to get the formal or informal like approval from the topic coordinator at least, which means like notify your topic coordinator and also copy the UFA in the same page, in the same loop. And above all of us, we also have our Paula, which is definitely our big boss, who is the Master of Social Work Course Coordinator and like the industry engagement lead, and also the Deputy Teaching Program Director. So if there is any complicated case or we need any like report or some kind of solutions from like Paula, so then we need definitely reach out to her, and Paula provide the overall leadership and oversight of the placement program. So this is the key roles that you may come across during the placement. And then let's look at the responsibilities. So regarding on the responsibilities, so first of all, we're still talking about the agency field supervisor, who is not providing social work supervision, which means you are the supervisor and who is monitor students' learning and also progress, but you are not the qualified social worker. So these are the responsibilities maybe we need to pay much more attention about. So these include help them to like create like a range of learning opportunities, activities that they could be involved in, and also overseas placement tasks, and be involved in the initial placement meeting and also the mid-placement meeting. So for the end placement meetings, there is only UFA and also students, so they both together. But for the initial placement meeting and also the mid-placement meeting, we need to include the AFS, UFS, and also UFA and student together. So yeah. And there is something like I would like to mention, which is about the observational checklist. It's in the 1, 2, 3, 4.4. If you're the supervisor from agency, but you're not the qualified social worker, but still monitor students' learning, so you have to complete these 2 observational checklists. I will provide some details later. This is not the assessment itself, but this is another structured way of supporting students' learning. The good news is like there are multiple ways to find the document, to access the document. So first of all, student can download it from the flow site. If they have been allocated all the details and also get all the allocation details, they will know if they have UFS or AFS. So the student should know like their AFS is not on-site social worker. So their responsibility is to download the form and also send the copy to the agency supervisor. And you just need complete this observational checklist and get back to students, so they will upload it before the mid-placement and also the end of placement. I will provide the details later in next page, and also I can you can also as the student as agency supervisor, you can also find the document in our agency and resources hub. We're gonna share the link at the end of today's session. So if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. And also liaise with the UFS regularly with students' learning and progress. So, which means you also need to keep regular contact with the UFS or UFA, I think, if you feel like the students not or need more support, or maybe there are some questions or concerns arise. So feel free to let the UFS and also UFA know. So we will work together to find the solution. And also contribute to the review meetings. So which means if students have some like challenges or they need more conversations or they need more support, so AFS need to facilitate some meetings with UFS or UFA together and to just make sure the student is in the right track. Okay, so let's move on to the next page. Oh, sorry, it's here. Which is about the observational checklist. So the observational checklist is just about like some kind of skills and also the knowledge, and so it's not too many details, but you definitely need to look through it carefully because there are two different types of the observational checklist, which is about indirect placement and also direct placement. For example, if your agency is mainly about the research-based placement, so probably you need to download the indirect observational checklist. But if you are providing the frontline services, so then you need complete the direct placement observational checklist. But I believe we can work with students together because this is their responsibility to download the form and also inform all the people in the loop. All right. So the next one is about our social work supervisors, which means if you are a qualified social worker and providing the formal social work supervision, so these kind of responsibilities, you need to keep it in your mind or like just to remind yourself. It includes suggesting activities and goals for ELM. So ELM is very important document for students to track their learning, and also it's live document they need to build on, and also they need to bring it into the mid-placement assessment and also end-placement assessment. So if you are providing the social work supervision, so you need to guide students how to make sure their learning can connect with the practice standards, and also applying the series into the practice activities, and develop supervision agreements, and help students integrate the theoretical components to practice utilizing tools students will bring to the supervision, and also supervision their reporting, and again, raise any issues and concerns or change to placement with the students and UFA. So these are all the responsibility regarding on the social work supervisors. So we're gonna send the copy after this session, so feel free to review it again if as needed. All right, so the next one is about the UFA, which means the University Field Assessor. So UFA is the person or the staff member from university who is oversight of the placement and progression of student learning. So they are the first contact person, once again, between students, supervisor, and topic coordinators. They also chair the placement meetings, which includes 3. So the first one is the initial placement meeting, second one is mid-placement meeting, and the third one is the end placement meeting. So they also need to respond to the concerns or issues raised on placements. So this is belong to UFA. I think we have multiple roles and looks slightly different, but we work together to support the students at the end of their placements. So feel free to let us know if you have any questions. Yep. So this is about the role and responsibilities. And next page is about our placement hours.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. In the handbook that you will have received, you will have all of these pages and more, so don't panic if you haven't absorbed it all. You'll also get the recording with the slides. It's interesting every semester to see what students think might be hours for placement, and we have to make sure that they're doing hours according to the rules of ASW. So travelling to and from placement is not permitted as placement hours, even if they're driving for an hour or travelling in a bus for an hour. The critical ones, though, are what can they put in there. So anything to do with placement. If you've sent them off to an activity or a short training course or something that is relevant to your placement activities and learning for the student, they can put that down as placement hours. It doesn't need further approval. Yes? Might just take the mic. Yep.
So my student raised this question to me during their interview that I just want to raise here in regards to placement hours and attending the learning opportunities relating to the placement. What if it's attending an intensive for another topic that can be related, like relatable to the placement? Can that be counted? No.
No.
Worth a shot.
That's how curious students can be in their logic development, and that's good, but no, it's not to do with that placement. I would hope every topic they have at Flinders is related to a placement in some way. It's social work. But no, good one though, I haven't heard that one. So, but yeah, it's got to be directly related to your field of practice and your world of interest and their development in that field of skills and practice. Sometimes they might have a group supervision on another day when they're not at placement. So they're doing placement Monday to Thursday, but on Fridays they have a regular every 3 weeks or so group supervision, just because that's how it's managed by their group supervisor. They are allowed to write those 2 hours in on that Friday, even though they weren't on placement. And you can be assured that their attendance will be noted by the group supervisor. So all supervision that is related to their placement is allowed to be included in their times. And I encourage placement agencies to give the student 30, but my preference would be up to 1 hour of reflective practice and preparation for tomorrow's meetings or tomorrow's client services that they're going to be doing, running groups, whatever they need to do. They can have that regular guaranteed time somewhere in their day where they can do that. But reflective practice, as you would all know, is critical to social work, and it's how we actually integrate it into our DNA, what we've been learning as a social worker in practice. So I don't think any time can be wasted when it's spent in reflective practice. So please, please, please ensure that they get that space to do that shift from, you know, the academia to the practice and then into the integrating it into their way of operating as a social work, you know, future social worker. So 60 minutes a day can be really, really helpful. The student is very clear, and you can be very clear with them too that you know this. They are not allowed to do any other topic work during that hour. So whatever important study they've got, that is just not placement hours. So if they're saying they've got another topic on a Tuesday at 2 o'clock for an hour online, that's okay, it's not counted as placement hours. So that day will always be reduced by an hour or whatever the expectation is. Yeah, and recognising that many students come from other countries other than Australia, so they might not be as familiar as breaks, lunch breaks, entitlements. Students are not only entitled, they should be required to take appropriate breaks like anyone in the workforce. And there are students who are told you will not get breaks. You will, have to swallow your sandwich as you're walking from one room to another or something. We don't want that to happen. So do make it very clear to the students when their breaks will be, how they will take them, where they go to take those breaks. About sick leave, don't come anywhere when you're sick. It's not appreciated, so they're allowed to take a sick day, but all the normal rules of, workplace rules remain the same for the student as much as for you. So after 2 days, if they're away a third, they need a sick leave certificate, etc. We do not encourage work from home. Work from home is a very new phenomena, and I think the modern young person doesn't get the same grounding in that Monday to Friday brutal, 9 to 5 work ethic. And I think at times that's a disadvantage. So yes, there are times when students do a placement that is work from home based, but is highly monitored and managed. They are the very few exceptions at the moment. If they're in an agency and it hasn't been negotiated, they're not working from home. They need to attend, and it's not their choice. They're required to attend their placement unless it's managed differently. I think we've already said this. All right. Student orientation, induction and placement. For some, I guess one of the lessons I never fail to keep relearning is do not presume. I think I'm not presuming a lot of times, and I realise suddenly I am presuming. When we go into a new workplace as employees, we should be given an induction, an orientation, whatever you're calling it. We should be given the workplace code of conduct, the policies and procedures that relate to us as employees or staff or volunteers. Students require and deserve the same. And so do make sure they are fully familiarised with the environment, the requirements, what is normal behaviour, dress code, etc. Make sure they're done. Even while there are many international students, even just a local like me, going into a new place is strange and foreign. It's that much harder to navigate when you've come from overseas and not had too many years here in Australia. So do make sure you set them up for success with that orientation and induction. If you can't provide them with the routine policies and procedures, I'd say you need to review that. Students have said they've been told no, they're not allowed to access them. I don't think they've got the right message. They might have misunderstood it, but please make sure you initiate that as part of your role of supervising and setting students up for success. I think it's critical that as supervisors you lock in a time each week to check in with the student. If you're the task supervisor, not the social work supervisor, it's worth having a firm day and time, even if it's 15 minutes, to check in twice a week with the student and make sure that they know what they're doing, they're feeling safe, they know where they're going next, etc. I think it's always disappointing when I hear supervisors haven't been available, despite students constantly requesting times. you get less dependent students when you offer them a little space in your work life. And I think that's an important thing to remember. Reflection time we've talked about, lunch breaks we've talked about, and the assistance with the experiential learning map. We'll talk about that. No, we've already talked about that. I think this is my last 2 slides. Yes, we'll race through this. Again, review the slides to remember what we've breezed through today. This is a timeline in Word format, and it's good to be aware of what you need to do in each of those blocks of hours as a supervisor. It isn't a placement that just runs for 500 hours and that's it. There are things to do, things to achieve and work through with the student. So I prepared this little document, which you'll find as a proper document, to help navigate. This is what I was using when I was a supervisor of social work students, and I've tried to make it more generic so that it would apply for schools or for, DCP or wherever. If you don't have a clear idea of what you're meant to do in those first days, 0 to 2 weeks, this will take you through all the steps that we're expecting students have become familiar with. So look at all the induction and training that they're required to have before they start with you, if that's the case. Let them study the agency's policies and procedures, code of conduct, etc. All those things that you would do as a new start to your team. Let them observe programs and services briefly, first 0 to 2 weeks. Confirm your check-in times so that the student knows when you're going to meet with them and discuss how they're tracking each week. And then you'll also have that opportunity to know when is their next social work supervision if it's not you. So just, keeping that conversation really connected with each other. It might seem very obvious, but it isn't always. I'm just saying that. Discussion with the agency and social work supervisor about the ELM is critical. So this is where I find a lot of the disconnect comes for students who actually end up in a termination experience, or even we called it a learning contract. We're now changed it to a learning development plan. So you'll see that as a new phrase. The contract has a very tough feel to students. But if you don't get the activities in your ELM written well, the student will struggle to know, why am I even here? I don't know what I'm meant to do. They'll look at the list at the back and think, oh, that sounds like it might work, and have no real idea. So it might look like a really brilliant list. If they haven't worked it through with you, it probably can be guaranteed that they don't really know if that's going to work or not. And so that's where I would invite you as supervisors to give them some flesh to that idea for the ELM tasks that they're going to undertake for that placement. They've just arrived. In 2 weeks, how are they going to really know what they need to do and what they're going to do, and how it's going to teach them the, cover off on 9 practice standards? So do help them in that first 2 weeks with that. They have to have it written. They have to have it written up in draft for the initial placement meeting. So this takes you through the tasks for the supervisor and the student working in tandem together. And I think that's it. Is that correct? That's it. We'll leave it there for now. We don't have, so hang on, okay.
Sorry, everyone, we're just mindful of the time because we have second half of the orientation and we invite our ISS team to give you or provide you more like culture background and also practical strategies and walk through the case together. So these are the teaching on the placement, which is, I think it's also Anna's quite experienced areas, but I can just deliver some philosophies or core principle, which is about like I do, we do, and you do. So for as an agency supervisor, probably you can just show how you manage the case in front of the students and let them shadowing you and do some observation, and then co-facilitate some meetings or co-organize activities with the student together, make sure like they can gain some experience and practice, and then just get rid of them quickly and let them to organize the event or ask questions or just do something by themselves. So this is the core like the nature and the philosophy. And I think maybe we can have, if we have chance, we can have more sessions to talk about this. And the other thing is about the ELM, which is the document that students have to submit. This their like kind of Bible, so they have to complete every part by working with you or UFS and also UFA to make sure like their placement will have an successful like outcome. Yeah, so I will quickly skip these pages and so providing the feed forward. Thanks for the concept from our Paula, our big boss. So this is really meaningful. So I just quickly walk through this because feedback is really important, and it's not just about like what happened before. It's more like how we can support students to move forward in different ways. So there are the principles and also the strategies, especially maybe you're gonna work with students from different culture background or different country. So provide the respectful and also trying to be objective and timely and provide the feedback will help them to like make sure they are in the right track. And sometimes if they are showing like very quietly in the meeting, instead of saying like what's happening around you, maybe just checking with them if they understand the instruction or trying to be explicit, and they can give you more like details how they feel in the meeting. So in that way, I think we can work with together about the students' like progress and learning. There is another thing I would like to mention here is about the insight feedback survey in the process and procedure. So can I ask a big question, like for a small question, like for the observational checklist that we mentioned before, is that the checklist for supervisor who is providing social work supervision need to do, or is just for the supervisor, they need to complete the observational checklist? Sorry. So for the observational checklist, that's people who providing social work supervision need to complete, or who is not the social worker, but just to monitor students' learning. The first one or the second one? Yes. Definitely. Thank you so much. Yes. Who is not the social worker in the agency, but monitor students' learning and their daily activities, they need to submit the observational checklist. But for this one, insight feedback survey, this is for the supervisor who is providing social work supervision. So this is all automatically. So you will receive the email link from the WIL team, and after you complete the survey or the feedback in this survey, so then they will send back to the students, and students will complete their part, and then the whole process will send to the UFA just for their review. So the whole feedback is transparent. So this is very important information I would like to emphasize. Once again, this is automatically, so you will receive the email link from WIL team. You don't need to reach out to people. If you have some trouble accessing the materials or the feedback, so feel free to let us know, or just directly contact the WIL team. And the student, sorry, yeah.
Just a feedback on that, we've got a large cohort, so last semester we were getting multiple
Yeah, multiple email. Yeah, yeah, instead of like multiple. Well,
Can I
can't-
interrupt?
yeah.
I was just thinking you can either set it up so that your Outlook, if you're using Outlook, will just send it straight to a folder which you've created to hold that. It's an automated system, so I'm not sure if we can do it. If it happens for one, it might happen to all, and others might value the reminder. The other thing is about those surveys is they're a reminder that you do need to do surveys, but not necessarily that week. There's 3 that will be sent out in the first half of the semester. So you make the decision when you're going to go to that survey. It is the same link, so you can just automatically delete the rest.
Sandra, if you can put the feedback in terms of what's going to make it better to manage larger numbers of students, just in an email, and I can then talk to the WIL team about whether or not we can do anything to customise that. I just don't know what we can do from a functional perspective. Did they indicate there was anything they could do? Okay, all right. Well, we'll take that on. Yeah.
In the first instance, though, problem solving would be delete and just keep a copy so that you're ready for the next. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. All good. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And now I think it's Paula's session. Maybe are you happy to like just run quickly about how to manage the challenges or student concerns? I think 3 or 4. Yeah.
I'm going to go through these slides, but then I might have a break. I think we need a break for just 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll come back. Is that all right? So I just want to talk a little bit about when maybe things aren't going as smoothly as we would like them to. And firstly, we just want to remember that everyone's really busy. The students are quite stressed. Some of them are very anxious about how they're going, whether they're doing well, whether they need to be doing more, less. Then there's a lot of questions from the students. So we just want to remind ourselves to be compassionate, both to ourselves, because we're really busy, but also that the student is usually genuinely there to learn and wanting to do their best. That doesn't mean that there are some barriers and obstacles for them to do that. We know they're learning, we know it's your workplace, but it's their classroom, so we just want to be mindful that that can be a tension, but it's also an opportunity as well. So I think in terms of adjusting expectations, every student is different. Everyone comes with different levels of skill, development, insight, judgment, capability, and we really want to make sure that we understand individual students' needs as early as we can. If you've got any concerns, I would rather you raise them sooner rather than seek to manage them yourselves, because we can always do preventative work early when we start to, if there's some wobbles even, rather than when they've completely fallen over. So contact the UFAs in the first instance, have a conversation, give them an email, just keep those channels of communication open. So small concerns, if you've supervised students before or you're kind of new to supervising, there are some things to look out for in terms of how the student's developing and whether they're in first placement and the expectations around what that would look like versus when they're in their final placement, and some of the expectations of that are quite different. But yeah, getting issues identified early and looking at contingencies and mitigation processes early is always going to be better. And it's a fairer process for the student as well. And we want to support you in terms of what you need from us as well. We want to be transparent. We want to communicate this with the students. If there are concerns, tell them that there are concerns. We hear from a lot of students that they're a bit blindsided by the feedback at the end when they thought they were being told they were doing well. And they kept asking for feedback and anything they needed to do, and they seem to be a disconnect almost between why they've ended up, either having a termination or having multiple learning plans administered. There's some differences of understanding going on there. So we really want to make sure that people are communicating both in a written way and a verbal way. So don't presume that everyone understands what you've told them. Follow it up with a written dot point, or ask them to provide you with some dot points on what you covered, what they understood, what they're going to do going away. What else? Record early, and record in a way that you'd be comfortable with the student being able to see that communication as well, because we want to be really transparent with students when things perhaps don't progress the way that they really want them to. So we're all about procedural fairness. So all of these actions and behaviours that we're kind of talking about really do reinforce that. So we can speak to the students in a really clear way, both as they're progressing at different points in time. So what does this mean for students? It means having the opportunity to present information and hear their perspectives on it. What do they understand happened? We need really good information, and we need good record keeping in order to have those conversations with students. The way in which we've managed it kind of this last semester has meant that we need really 360 reviews are the best way. So if we're getting input from, on-site supervisors and managers, and we're getting UFAs and UFSs, really good information sharing between each other, it really makes that process a lot easier to discuss with the students. So document specific examples. So if I'm reading things like the student potentially couldn't perform safely on their own, but that doesn't tell me, I guess, why you think that. It doesn't tell me what the student wasn't able to do. So I really would prefer it in quite behavioural terms or measurable terms, so that I can discuss that really clearly with the student and unpack what that means for them in terms of their practice. We want to be using the learning development plans at whatever point they need to be used, and they can be reissued multiple times. We can extend them. They can finish, and they can maybe be progressing quite well, and they might need another one kind of mid review. So it just depends. We want these to be quite integrated into the placement processes, not just used as a punitive process. And the main thing we really want to do is ensure that we are working together to identify if a student is at risk, and if there's a potential termination, we want to have had discussions and conversations prior to that happening, ideally. And even if there's a serious kind of conduct issue from a student perspective, we would encourage you to pause the student's placement so that we can at least have an opportunity to have a meeting or have a discussion. But yes, if there's grounds for taking them off, offline, that is absolutely fine. And at the end of the day, it might end up being a termination, but we want to be sure that we've done as much as we possibly can to cover everything off before that process happens, because it's quite a, potentially catastrophic outcome for many students. It has huge implications for them. So yeah, let's do early work. Let's identify things. And you can't leave. I'm so sorry. You must stay. It's okay. So yes, think about the learning development plans, just perhaps in a slightly different way than they've been used in the past. It gives an opportunity to target really particular areas of competency that the student may be struggling with, and we want to implement them in a really concrete, clear way so the student understands exactly what's expected of them. And work closely with the UFA in terms of that. So we're working with the UFAs to standardise, I guess, some of these processes so they're also really clear on how we're making more specific ways of supporting the students. So you've got an action plan and then you've got a time point when the development plan would be reviewed. And the student needs to know exactly what's expected of them, by when, and so they're able to meet those milestones in a really kind of clear, transparent way. These are the processes that we're kind of looking at in terms of concerns, and so the agency supervisor and the university field assessor are really kind of the two integral pieces of the puzzle to start with, and often the UFAs are speaking quite closely to the topic coordinators to manage things at a kind of local level. If there are concerns around things not being addressed or response times not being kind of there, you can then move towards the course coordinators, and I'm the course coordinator for the Masters, and Rebecca Stars is the course coordinator for the Bachelors. And then if there's still more need to kind of do something at a kind of next level, then you would come to me as the teaching program director. So just to be clear, so we'd like to see some clear kind of flow process happening before we get to that point of termination, ideally. Do people have access to this now? Yes? So this is regularly updated. So, and in terms of, in case if anything's missing, please let us know. If anything's outdated, please let us know. But yeah, this is a kind of shared site where all the resources live. All right, so before we wrap up and just have a quick break, does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask? Sandra. That's fine.
Just touching point on access plans. So we've had obviously a bit of increase within our cohort of access plans, but I'm just thinking about how that, because we don't actually, is it the students that present that to us? Because sometimes we're not finding out they've got access plans to number of weeks in. So the problem with that is we need to be able to formulate some strategies around their learning and around their placement. Yep. So
yep.
I'm just wondering what the process is.
Is there a general approach to that we've taken?
Yes, so the access plan is used particularly in allocations to placements. If there's something that needs to be, noted for the service or agency, they are encouraged at the interview to have that discussion, the student is, but it's the student's privacy and confidentiality, and they hold the right to disclose or not disclose, knowing that as topic coordinator, I have advised Will team of any accommodations. They do not know the issues, but they might know it must be a 3-day placement. But beyond some of those superficial things, it's like in the workplace. We don't have to disclose that we're, 3 o'clock and we're going to have a slight, hissy fit and it'll be all over at 3:01. We don't have to disclose these peculiarities or differences or adjustments. But I would encourage students to share that in the interviews. So in your interviews, there's nothing prohibiting you from asking, is there anything particular that you're aware of that we can support you more, informed way, something like that, to invite them to share. But some students prefer never.
Yeah, and I think that's the students I'm thinking of, the ones that didn't disclose, and then sort of halfway through they're going, well, I'm not meeting certain prac standards, or and because there was a learning or behaviour learning around that.
Yeah.
Are they telling you that's the reason why they're not meeting the developmental
so some might have strategies in their access plans that we find out later that they might have to sort of step out of supervision, like group supervision for a little bit, or that there's some strategies in place where they might have to sort of not necessarily have face-to-face contact with sort of clients. So there's a few issues around that relating to that social work practice.
Those sorts of accommodations are not specified in access plans at all. So that's where I don't know what the student is intending there to just get out of something. But if that happens, I would always go back to the UFA and then to me or Anna as the TCs to say, this student's not able to deliver on X, Y, and Z. Is there something we should know? And I can most likely assure you that we don't know.
There's a couple of things that I think are really important here. Is that, like Ros was saying, at the beginning of that, when the students come on board, once the interview process is done, that initial meeting of, how do we best support you? What are your needs? What are your challenges? That's the way that I would start to invite the student to share that with you. They're under no obligation to share it with you. Yeah. But if it's worded in that way about, is there anything we need to know to support you on your placement? Is there anything that you would find particularly challenging? Are there anything that you need us to do differently? And they still don't tell you. Yeah. Then at that later point, if that does become an issue, that would be something that we would need to speak to the student, about in terms of maybe what we need to do differently moving forward,
Of course, that's what we do at the beginning, part of our assessment processes.
Yeah, but they're not telling you, is that kind of what I'm
so
saying?
we have especially a couple of neurodivergent students.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then later on it's come out that they've got sort of certain learning strategies within their access plan that wasn't actually presented to us. So and that's been actually a couple of times. So that's why I'm thinking it seems to be something that's happened often, even though we've provided that option on a number of occasions with our on-sites and with us as a clinical supervisor.
I think the tricky part about students is they don't think they need it till then they've needed it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm wondering what Flinders is like.
Although
on your side of what's
I
on
have
that
to
side.
question still, did you ever see their access plan?
I did.
Okay.
And that was provided by the university.
So whether they have an access plan or not, it is about supporting them in terms of their needs. I think it's very difficult if they're not being forthright.
Yes, yeah.
You can only do so much with what you've got in terms of what they've told you. But if it becomes an issue and, then it's about kind of readjusting things. If that student's not coping or is finding things more stressful, then of course the things that they need are going to start to become more apparent. So, but they might not see it's difficult, and I think it's not unusual that they might then disclose that a little bit later down the track when the pressure starts to increase. I'll have a think about that. There might be some other things we can do at our end as well in terms of supporting the students to learn. Students aren't particularly good at self-advocating. And so, they don't necessarily want to point out what differences they have or what their needs are. They don't want to be treated differently. So there's some work to be done there, I think, in terms of how we can support that process so that it's not seen as, creating any sort of issues for them. It's a supportive process. Yeah. Someone else have their hand up? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a confusion point for me, for our agency as well, because I understand about the student's right to disclose or not disclose in terms of what the disability or medical condition is. But I think there's inherent requirements, that's one, that the university needs to take care of. Does the student have inherent requirements or not?
Do they meet the inherent requirements?
Yes, do they have, and I think the principle to work with is, I think anyway, you don't have to disclose the reason, but accommodations need to be disclosed. We cannot be guessing as an agency at what accommodations are needed.
No, of course not.
So you can disclose accommodations without going into the fact that the student has anxiety or anything else. So if we just focus it on the accommodations, I think then we can respect the confidentiality part of it as well, because I think that gets confused. So if it's all confidential, then we've got no opportunity to communicate and to accommodate
Yeah.
the student. So
Yeah, I agree. I think that's that early stage of that discussion about how do we best support you. Is there anything you need us to do differently? Are there any things, what works best? What do you struggle with? What are your challenges? What are your needs? That conversation opens up that opportunity. And so, so all the way along their studies, the students are being assessed around the inherent requirements, the charter around professional conduct. I think it depends what the issues are. That kind of I'd be curious to sort of understand a bit better what some of the issues are in terms of what sort of accommodations are needed and why they're becoming an issue.
I think it's a case-by-case scenario,
Sure.
obviously, but some of the issues that we've sort of navigated within my agency is neurodivergence, ADHD and ASD specifically.
Autism?
Yes.
Yeah.
So those two things, and because it's a spectrum, there might not be, it's not the same for every student.
No.
Again, if we just focus on accommodations, I think we can get around that confidentiality issue.
Sure.
And the other one, that's the huge one, is that there's so much undisclosed lived experience of mental ill health, especially among international students who are too fearful to disclose it anywhere because of the fears of visas and all of that, and the fear of discrimination and the stigma and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's an ongoing piece of work for all of us to, to manage.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there are some still lines in the sand. And so in terms of that, and we talk about this quite a lot in terms of needing to be able to maintain fitness for placement, fitness for practice. If a student becomes compromised along the way, we have a duty of care. We have a responsibility to support that student and do things with that student that can mitigate or create contingencies to support them. And so I think don't be afraid to ask what can we do, because we actually have a responsibility to do perhaps a bit more than we have done before. And we need to work together. And I think it might be that, we're thinking about how to support neurodivergent students some more in the workplace, because that's going to be an ongoing issue in terms of ensuring that accommodation and, making sure that things that are seen as adjustments and accommodations actually just become how we work inclusively in workplaces. So, there's an opportunity there for sure. Anyone else have any questions? Yes, Sue. Okay, thank you. I'll keep this one, you can give it that one.
Just on that, what are the conversations? So one of the things for me is being able to prevent. You don't want to get to a point where a student is so compromised and so at risk. So, and I agree that it won't necessarily talk about it in an interview. I find that's fairly common because they're in a powerless position. So if I say this, will that mean they won't take me on? And I've had students state that to me.
Yes.
I didn't want to tell you because I was worried your service wouldn't take me. So I just wondered what preparation and reassurance or conversations that the university does or could have to support or prep students, because I really do feel if we can prevent, and some placements won't be an ideal placement for a student.
Yeah.
Again, you don't always have that information taking into account confidentiality, but there's also some responsibilities shared, student, university, agency. So I just wonder what conversations do occur so that we can, for everybody, make this a better pathway.
Yeah, so I mean, from the beginning of the orientation, we talk about support needs and access plans and all of the different things that Flinders has in terms of the way it supports students, and you'll hear more about that as in the next presentation. We can only do so much in terms of the students' willingness to work with us, and so, and we're moving to create a much more clearer discourse around the fact that identifying this early doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to continue, that it's not an all or nothing situation, but I'm not sure that messaging has permeated yet. I think there's been a lot of fear, there's been a lot of punishment, and I think the students are really tentative, to be honest, about disclosing for all sorts of reasons, as you're aware. So I think we need to do more, and we're doing more, but it's kind of early days, to be quite honest with you. But I think we've got to just, again, early identification, you know, if things are kind of, you know, maybe not seemingly going along in the way that they could for the student, it's about that early communication, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that, that anyone who has an access plan is required to meet with the topic coordinator and discuss the accommodations required. Even there, they may not disclose everything to us, so we can only provide accommodations that they've indicated would support them, but we also won't necessarily have what their issue is. It doesn't say that on the plan, but they are all drilled. You need to share this with your placement. You will be allocated a placement that will accommodate these needs. They are very clear from those conversations, but they do live with that fear of the what ifs and the unknowns and can I even trust them and all of those things that anyone has. But then you complicate that with, you know, risks of visas and placements not happening. It's tricky, but they are very clearly messaged. This is to support you, and the agency can't support if they don't know. So we're very clear about that.
It's also about the safety of our clients.
Yes.
That's what we're all there for.
That's right.
We need to be ensuring, and our workers as well, if they're in a situation and something occurs, it can put at risk our clients, other workers. So it is,
absolutely.
it is very serious. So how that's, but I hear you saying, Paula, that early days, good to know that if you're working on that as well. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? What time is it actually? I'm just checking. Okay, 2:30? Okay. Should we have a break or should we continue? Yes, can we have, is it okay if we have a 10-minute break? Just yet. Stretch your legs. Do you know where the bathrooms are? Have we done the bath? Did we do the house? Oh, lovely. Okay, well, if you can come back in 10 minutes at 2:40, that'd be great. Thank you. Hi. Crystal.
This is from Rose. Yeah, but I think you can email to Rose about the PowerPoint. So.
PowerPoint, it's just that because if it's logged on, but we can log her off and then I can wait.
Post the recording here. This is
Post it.
here. Yeah.
We start in a minute. Or
someone else wants to talk.
Yeah. But there won't be, in case someone wants to interject, but I'm going to try and keep on time. You're like way behind. That's the only problem. So I am focused on the case. Yeah. I won't mention too much.
I mean, rather than necessarily introducing ourselves,
No,
just say
we're just a team of peeps that
across the university.
Yeah, across the various parts of the university.
So is someone meant to introduce you?
No, I'm meant to introduce myself. I'm going to start now. Hello, everyone. Hi. We're just about to start this second session. I hope everyone's nice and refreshed, had a bit of a stretch, some biscuits, and feel free to help yourself to anything else. But I thought we'll just get started because we are running a bit behind schedule. But hopefully we'll catch up, and we don't want to keep you here past 5 o'clock. I don't want to stay here past 5 either. So first of all, let me just introduce myself. My name is Peng, and I'm an international student advisor, and I work for International Student Services. I have my lovely colleague as well at the back. Her name is Cassie, and she's also an international student advisor. So when students come and they finish placement, or maybe they fail placement, they come and cry in our office. So we have basically developed a lot of things to support international students, and today we're so happy to be able to present this to everyone here, and how we would support international students while on placement. This session will look at demything and understanding and supporting our students. So session aims and agenda for today. By the end of the session, you will learn and understand who our international social work students are, demyth common misconceptions about international students on placement, learn practical strategies to work with culturally and linguistically diverse students, and understand how Flinders prepares students before placement. Our agenda, we're going to start off with an icebreaker. Then we're going to move to a interesting section, which is called You Can't Ask That, Demything Common Concerns. Number 3 is case study, which you all get to work together on. And the last one is how Flinders prepares and supports our international cohort. So, the team. So this, basically, the university has so many support services for our international students, not just international students, but our domestic students as well. So we are a big group. Some are missing in the photo, but we are a big group, and we have come all together to develop this kind of thing for obviously yourselves, the organisations, and we just think that, well, this is actually our first time running this. So we hope you enjoy it, and obviously leave us some feedback as well. But let's start off with an icebreaker. Now, a wonderful part of my job is that I get to speak to students every day. And they always tell me about how they are confused with sometimes our phrases that we use. We love to shorten everything, we love to use Aussie slang, and that's no different when you go out on placement as well, when you're going out and working. So I've got a really fun one. Now, some of them are actually really made up, and you'll never hear any international student say it, but others I've actually heard students using our expressions in a different way. So what did the student mean? You will see a series of misused Aussie phrases, and your job is to guess which phrase the student is trying to use. These are our Australian workplace phrases, as you can see, very common, we all know them. Student says, "Don't be worried, there are absolutely no anxieties." Which one is this one? No worries, well done. Please do not place your poultry embryos in one storage container. Don't put your eggs in one basket. Very good. Let us circle and return to this topic. let's circle back. I have heard a student say this once. Please reveal the legumes. Spill the beans. Very good. I am uncertain we will utilise the auditory organ. Which one was that one? Play it by ear. Yes, that one's totally made up, but I just thought it would be funny to put that in there. Awesome. So, demything. You can't ask that. So this was actually a section that we thought would be quite useful for our practitioners and our placement organisations, because I'm sure we are all thinking the same thing. We're all thinking similar questions, and we might not be brave enough to ask them. So today is your opportunity, and it is also our opportunity to give you some information about the things that we hear a lot about our international students, provided by the WIL team and even from our students themselves, that certain things that you may think or people have perceptions about our international students. So in this section, we'll tackle some questions placement organisations have often told us but don't feel comfortable with asking. But today you can. So the first one we get lots of feedback about is, have students been screened for English? So as an international student advisor and someone who's worked in the admissions process as well, all students are screened very heavily for English. They do, for the entry requirement to enter social work, bachelor or masters of social work, you do need to pass an English test. Yes, it's down there too. Yeah, I was getting to that. Yes, I was getting to that. So there are not just a test. It's face-to-face, yeah. So basically the students, what they'll do is they go in their own country, they have centres, English centres, and they'll sit a test with an invigilator and an examiner on the spot. So they are quite rigorous. They test on speaking, listening, reading and writing. What you need to get would be a 7, which is the highest level in any Australian university. And basically you have to get a 7 in all sub-bands, speaking, listening, reading and writing. The most famous, or I guess the most popular test is the IELTS test, which is the International English Language Testing System. Another one would be the Pearson testing of English, so that's a PTE. So they're just 2 really popular tests that I guess international students do. They have a 2-year validity as well. So if a student takes a test and it's 3 years past, they'll need to do another one to get into university and to get into social work. There are other ways to meet this entry as well. A package with an English provider. So we have a college here. So our college is Flinders University Academy. So they can actually do a specific course. So they can do 20 weeks of English and then they'll come on and do a Master of Social Work or a Bachelor of Social Work. So they must meet the entry requirements first before they can actually start their degree. Language of instruction. So language of instruction, which is what you've mentioned before. If you'd studied in an Australian school or maybe you've done another tertiary qualification, then you can actually meet that through language of instruction. That only has a 5-year validity. So if someone's done a degree and it was 10 years ago, they would still need to meet it in a different way, usually an English test. This also includes the successful completion of a graduate certificate in the society and the individual. So here at Flinders, we do have a pathway to get into social work, to the Master of Social Work. The graduate certificate is about an 8-week to 9-week course. Once they finish that course, they would actually meet the English requirement to get onto a Master of Social Work. Obviously, we do have first language as well. So if you're a citizen of Canada, Ireland, Singapore, US and the UK as well, that's how they meet English. So when you do see your students, they have all been properly screened. They also have to meet Department of Home Affairs as well, so they've got their own set criterias as well. So it's actually quite a rigorous process prior to them coming on to the program. Language comprehension is not proficient enough for placement. The reality is all our international students, like we said, must to sit an English test to come in or meet it in a different way. Language comprehension develops in context, especially in professional and practice environments. Communication challenges often relate to confidence, understanding, Australian slang, like I said as well before, and speeds of conversation. So in our job, obviously, we speak to students every day. So we have the ability to, I guess, grade our English and speak in a slower way because we understand. But however, when you're in a workplace, it's a lot quicker. Everything's a lot faster. So you would think or you would hope that students can keep up. The important distinction here is language proficiency doesn't equal communication confidence. A lot of our students, when they come on placement, they are so terrified to make a mistake, to speak to locals. So a lot of them are quiet in terms of confidence. It's a lot about building that confidence with them as well. A lot of them are new to the environment, new to a job as well. It might be that their placement is their job. So they are really, I guess, in terms of professionalism, knowing local terminology, it is difficult. And processing time can look differently. Clarification of local experience of expressions, modelling a professional social work language. Yeah. Sorry, we will get to that as well. yeah. There'll be some other tasks as well about how we're going to give you guys tips as well of how to, I guess, appropriately ask somebody as well. International students do not have enough work experience in Australia. Many international students have prior professional and volunteering experience, often overseas. The key gap is usually local systems. So, like they might not be aware of NDIS, Centrelink, how the hospital settings work, and obviously, placement exists precisely for Australian practice as well. A lot of them do have part-time jobs, so they have worked here in Australia, but a lot you might find may not, especially if they're in the bachelor degree. An important reframe is lack of Australian experience does not equal the lack of professional skill or readiness to learn. Now, let's do some together. We're going to demyth a few things, and this is your opportunity to ask some questions. If you have a burning question that you would like to ask, think about what questions have you always wanted to ask, what has been challenging in past placements, and what would you feel more confident supervising, what would you need to help you feel more confident in supervising international students. I've got a Slido. So scan the QR code. Please put in your questions and we'll try our very best to answer them. Let me check the question. Just to make it a bit more. I've got it up here, but I don't know what the best thing is. I'm not answering the questions. That's the thing.
Oh, okay, because that will be.
Yeah.
Crystal. Yeah. So I was like, oh, we're done now. And I'm like, no, you're not.
I'm going to get Crystal and pull out. Where did Rox go? She just disappeared. Just going to give another minute or so for everyone to pop in a question. Okay. Keep submitting the questions because we'll definitely look at more and answer them as we go along. So there's a question here, and I hope our academics are ready to answer them. The first question is, are Master of Social Work students required to have a relevant human services undergraduate?
So those going directly into the Master of Social Work have to have a related undergraduate degree in health-related services. The students that gain access through a different pathway undertake the graduate certificate in society and the individual, which is what Peng was referring, you were talking about that before, the 10-week graduate certificate that they need to undertake and pass, and if they're successful at that, that meets the requirements for them to then gain entry into the Master of Social Work. No, it's not. It's all in person. So the international students have to be on campus. So yeah, no, they can't undertake an online course, no.
Just for clarifications for international students, as part of their student visa requirements, they can't do any more than 1/3 of their course online. Okay, so in a 2 years master's degree, you're looking at 4 to 5 topics maximum they could do online when they do roughly 4 semesters per topic. So predominantly they're in person with their learning.
Okay. I like this question. Is Master of Social Work an opportunity to gain a visa to live in Australia such that some of students... Oh, hang on, sorry, one popped out of nowhere. So is Master of Social Work an opportunity to gain a visa to live in Australia such that some students aren't truly motivated to be practicing social work? Okay, so...
I think the answer to that is yes, social work can be a pathway to a longer term visa for Australia, but students are still required to go through the social work degree, and they're still assessed on that. So whilst they might enter with that thought, they have to do the same work as everyone else to come out with the qualification.
Mm-hmm. And yes, it is. It is basically, we have what's called a SOLS list. So it is a skills in demand list that Department of Home Affairs has basically put on their website and says, hey, we need social workers, so come and study here. So I think regardless of whether their motivation is to come and study social work or they come in and say, hey, this is my chance to also live here and work here in Australia, you might find a lot of students develop the love for social work as well. So not necessarily that they start off with that mentality, but they might grow to actually enjoy social work as well. So yes and no, and that is our reality. If the government's going to say, hey, come and live in our country and be a social worker, I don't think people are going to say, no, I'm not going to do that. So that's a very valid question, and thank you for asking that, because we do get that question a lot as well. Another question is, How can we educate team members to be more mindful and respectful and tolerant of students' culturally diversity, e.g., language pronunciation? Anyone want to take that one?
I think in one thing is, particularly in the field with social work, is that we should all be working with diverse communities anyway. So it should be practices in your jobs. But I'm also mindful that in workplaces we get busy and, we might stop and remember that, okay, the client is in front of me and I need to do these things, and perhaps sometimes we forget it. I'm Australian born. I work in a team with predominantly people who were not born in Australia. I work with international students, and something I've learnt that I have to do is I have to slow down. I have to slow down my speaking, I have to slow down my thoughts and give them space. And there are some people, and I'll say this, there are some accents on some students that I know I really struggle with, okay? But I put that on me. That's not their problem, that's mine, and I have to work out what to do. Now, there are some people I can work with and I can be on the computer looking up something else whilst they're talking to me and I'm getting information to feed them. But those other students I have to just give them my attention and focus on them so I can hear, because they're speaking all the right words, but it's the accent that I can struggle with. And so that's where I've learned that I just need to slow down. And with language pronunciation, just work with people. People generally, if they can see you're generally trying and you're trying to pronounce their name correctly, they're going to appreciate that. And so it's stopping and taking the time. Something that I always do with students, because I will have a student come in, and I'll say China because they're the largest cohort here, and they'll say their name is Bob, okay? And I'm like, what do you like to be called? And I say, I don't want you to tell me the name you think's easier for me to say. What name do you like to be called? Okay, and then they'll spend some time teaching me how to pronounce their name. Do I get it right? Not always, but they appreciate that I stopped and looked at them and took the time to try and work with them and get it right.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to add?
No? Okay.
I'll just add one thing, because I can't help myself, sorry. The question also was about how can we educate team members, and so I'm presuming you're also wanting to know how to encourage your staff members who are working with you and the students. And I think just helping them see the world through the students' lens and in their shoes. What would it be like to go to another country? I've been a white, obviously Australian to look at, but I've come and I've had an American accent and received incredible humiliation and derogatory comments, because that's the wrong accent here, way back in those eras where America wasn't quite the same standard and regard as they might be today. So it's about just realising, what would you be like if you went to China and you've learnt academic English but never conversational with the English born and bred person? So teaching the team to look through the lens of the student. It's not for us to judge whether it's a PR pathway. I have seen many who have said, I would never have chosen this subject or course if I'd realised what it was about, but I'm glad I did, because this is something I want to do. And so there are those moments of realisation that they've come into a degree they didn't understand, but found the joy of it. So helping your team be part of that student's journey and unveiling the strange stuff. I remember being asked at 17 by a university student, what do you do for a crust? And I'm like, what is that? And we were down at the river in the city and there were ducks, and I'm thinking, was I meant to bring bread? It's impossible to know these idiosyncrasies of language without having been born and bred. So why would we ever expect it of an international student to get it, you know? How's it going, mate? What's that meant to get for an answer? It's not obvious. It's not obvious if you haven't been, you know, born and bred here. So I think just encourage your team to see the what amazing strengths of the student, the courage that it took to come here, the determination to make it here, and be part of their success journey is something every team member can be part of and enjoy.
Thanks, Ross.
Sorry.
We've probably got time for one more. The next question was asked, how likely are the students paired with an agency or field of practice that they're interested in?
So I can confidently say that when I commenced in November, one of the first things that was brought in was getting students to actually identify their areas of interest. So we don't do any random allocations anymore because you may as well just run a lottery and, you know, put students' names next to random organisations, which did not make any sense. So we've made some significant changes through the work integrated learning processes where they don't get to select an agency per se, but they certainly get to say, well, I'm interested in working in, you know, women's health, or I'm interested in mental health, or I'm interested in disability, so that at least then we can start to, you know, move them towards their areas of interest. So I'd be interested to see whether this makes a difference in terms of the placements this time round, because again, we're trying to refine these processes as we go.
Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. And we're going to move on now. And I'm going to get Crystal to come up.
Sorry, Pen. Sorry, everyone. We're gonna skip this part because just mindful of the time, and this part is really really about unpacking the cultures and also giving some background regarding on how our international student looks like in the placement. But yeah, so I'm mindful of the time. So if we can focus on some practical strategies to support like your supervision, I think that would be good. And if we have time later on, so we can talk about that. Sorry, team. Yeah. And then I think we just hand over to Paula and focus on our case study.
Are we working in? Yeah. Okay, so we're just handing out a case study. We'll give you 5 to 10 minutes to have a read through that. But then we wanted you to work on your tables just to have a bit of conversation around how you might support Sarah as a final placement student. And we've got some prompting questions that I'll pop up in a minute, but give you a chance to have a read through the case study first, and then I'll come back. All right, so if you can nominate someone on your table to take some notes, you've got about 15 minutes to have a bit of a chat amongst yourselves. But some of the questions that we'd like you to focus on are the 3 up on the screen. So what are Sarah's strengths? What factors are contributing to how Sarah is showing up for placement? How would you and Sarah work together to develop a plan that is action orientated? So I'll give you 15 minutes to have a bit of a chat and we'll come back. All right, so who would like to share with us what you came up with around Sarah's strengths? Go ahead.
She's highly motivated.
Yep.
And she's very committed. Motivated and committed to her learning.
Yep. What else? Anyone have any other strengths? Yes? It's just because we can't hear it on the recording is the only reason I'm being difficult around that. Sorry. Good. Anyone get anything different in terms of strengths that we haven't heard already? Okay. So what factors are contributing to how Sarah is showing up for placement? Anything else that you've kind of picked up from in the scenario that's important to think about? So a contributing factor is anxiety about making a mistake?
Yeah, making a mistake, and therefore avoiding taking action or talking in the team meetings as well.
Yep, thank you. Anything else that could be either getting in the way or could be helpful or unhelpful?
We talked about professionals and authority and the impact that has, because they were talking about how she was interacting with leadership. And so just understanding that in a cultural lens too.
Did you say professionalism at the beginning?
Yeah, but also positions of authority.
Yeah, understanding that hierarchy is really important and that might be influencing things. It might be other things. What we don't want to do is presume, I guess. So we'd have to be asking lots of questions, I think, of Sarah in a curious way, not in an interrogation way, to explore and unpack what meaning she's making from what she's seeing and picking up on in her placement. Any other contributing factors? Oh, sorry.
We were discussing about like underlying anxiety that some international student might have, which is the fear of making a mistake and the repercussions that they have, because if you do something wrong or not well, that is going to impact on your placement, which lately also has impact on your visa status in the country and continue to be studying. So, which is very interesting because she started to shutting down. She's a person who was willing to improve herself. I was ready to work, but out of the sudden she started to notice everything, how to develop in the Australian environment, and then she's just turning down, trying to see how to perform.
Yep, absolutely. So in terms of environmental factors that might be contributing, did anyone sort of discuss some of those?
We spoke about the immunisation requirement, because I know some placements potentially still require them, but about that affecting her environment in terms of her then beginning her placement later, and then, you know, potential roll-on effect to visa requirements, or, you know, the learning of her peers and where her peers are at with her learning and what other, you know, scaffolded learning environments are happening alongside of that. And just like the feeling of starting late, you know, that sense of like feeling behind your peers, or, you know, like people were expecting you to be there and then there's questions as to why you weren't, and wanting to get your placement hours done, feeling like you're under pressure to do that because you started late, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, good. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's tons of hidden possibilities here that have already kind of, you know, been brought into, you know, before even Sarah's begun, that we might not be fully aware of. Yeah.
It's not explicit in the case study, but just the team's temperature and how they're going in terms of how busy are they? Are they like, you know, less patient, you know? And I guess we've talked about, you know, the authority and the relationships there, and being, you know, maybe a bit anxious to speak to people in more senior positions. But what if they're not available because they're too busy? Like,
absolutely. Like, students often are worried that they're going to be a burden, or that they're going to, you know, make extra work for people. So they're trying to sort of shrink, whilst at the same time, you know, we're asking them to extend and expand their practice. I think the other contributing factor, you know, that was really interesting is that what's been asked of Sarah from the supervisor, and, you know, and in terms of pacing and readiness and preparedness, I would say that perhaps hasn't been considered enough, and that maybe Sarah's been pushed, you know, too far too soon. And so it's not about that the student's doesn't have the competence, it's that they haven't had enough practice and rehearsal and preparation. So I think that's often a missing part in terms of the scaffolding for students and giving them lots of chances to rehearse and practice. And that can just be recording themselves on their phones to listen to how they sound, doesn't have to be another human being. There's all sorts of ways that technology lets us kind of do those rehearsals before we have to do the real thing. So as much experiential practice through rehearsal as possible is always a good mitigating process and contingency for students. And yeah, helps them practice their language skills, how they want to say something, because you're not always going to get it right the first time. So, we don't want them to test that out with another person. So let's build in some micro practice along the way. So how would you and Sarah work together to develop a plan that is action orientated? So what do people come up with in terms of some of the steps? If we go back to maybe what we missed in terms of supporting Sarah's development, what might we do differently? Bennett.
So she had some fear or some anxiety regarding meetings with other members of the team, particularly other disciplines, I think is the language it used. So it might just be building in some time with those other disciplines so she can familiarise herself with who they are and become a little bit more comfortable about who they are, but also start developing some relationship with those other people in the team.
So that's a good idea. The only thing that I think about when you say that is not all members of the team are always kind of generous and kind and have the time. So I would be thinking about the people that are kind of the most approachable in the team first, as maybe a kind of ease in to that. Maybe it's not the, the senior physicians or, maybe it's the registrars, maybe it's the other nurses, maybe it's the, other people in the team that might be able to be a little bit, and maybe, asking Sarah, is one-on-one easier? Or is how many people, again, I'd be asking about how anxious it makes her if we were meeting with one person versus meeting with two people. So we can just get a gauge of where she's at.
Yeah, I agree that, we'd want to make it sure that she was going to be spending that time with people, so it was going to be a positive experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it certainly could make it worse if we chose the wrong people.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, great, thank you.
I was thinking as well, I guess, being clear in a really soft way about expectations.
Okay.
Ideally, where we would like for Sarah to be, or maybe potentially where she would like to be at a certain point. And potentially, with a phone call, that was a little bit of a hard thing for her to get to. So that could be a medium goal or even a short-term goal. So working ways that we can get to that point, whether it's shadowing. And I think Bobo, one of our team members here, said, a role play in terms of a conversation. And one of the other things as well we discussed was discussing what the purpose of the phone call was, and potentially she might have her own ways and strategies to actually get to that point. Yep. So just finding out what her strengths are around that.
Yep. Yeah. I think what's really important is that you support the student to find their own reason for doing this, so that you want to, harness the intrinsic motivation in them, not so much about what we want them to achieve, but what do they want to achieve. And great points about how do we sort of build in levels in that process, because it might be that it's actually a kind of medium to slightly longer process. That I think also what I'm hearing from a lot of students and reading from a lot of students' reflections, particularly because I look after the last topic that they do in their degree, is that I'm hearing, I've watched someone do this and I've shadowed someone doing this, and I'm like, but they're in their final placement, so why are you not doing these things? And so I'm really concerned, I suppose, in some respects, as to whether or not they're being shielded. And I guess I'm curious as to how we break down that process, because it's about, Sue was saying, it's about client safety, it's about, integrity of support and integrity and reputation of services, and about your professional integrity as social workers. But I'm trying to find, I guess, a kind of more safer experiential practice approach so that by the end of this process, students have had exposure to all of the things that I kind of would have expected them to have exposure to when we graduate them as social workers. Not that they'll get that when they then get employed on the job, because they're just simply not, then they're not ready. They're not ready to do the work, and that's really concerning. And so I think, you know, we're trying to find ways to ensure that no matter where they are on placement, that they're getting enough real practice exposure. And how do we build that in safely for them and for everyone else? Yeah.
Something that we were discussing before about interpersonal communication and how much that is taken around that clinical supervision. We're finding that we are focusing a lot more on that rather than dealing with the social work side of things. So I can completely understand what you're saying around, yes, we'll have to, so we lean into those processes and those strategies. But when it comes down to the clinical side, using your social work language, what does that look like? Using your social work lens, your frameworks, to deconstruct and unpack all that. We're finding that a lot of the interpersonal communication side of things are taking up a lot of that before we even get to that theoretical, you know, using attachment theory and what does that look like in practice.
Yep.
So I think the readiness of students, I'm finding, coming into placement around those interpersonal communications seems to be, it's a vital part of their learning, and some of it seems to be lacking.
And so just so I can check, Sandra, are you talking about kind of the micro skills around
the micro skills,
attunement and active listening and reflecting back or summarising, those sorts of skills?
Even reflections. I've had students that don't know how to reflect in their final placements, or I've had students that don't know their prac standards, don't know what professional identity is, and you ask them around that language and they're final placement students, and they can't actually talk to that. So I know AI has been a bit of an issue, so we get students to talk to us through things rather than obviously written. But in saying that, we were just mentioning if you're doing a court report or if you're writing formally, you need to be able to write in a non-AI way. So it's a real interesting, we're finding that, especially in our work that we do, that a lot of those interpersonal skills, when you need to know a lot about relationships and relationship buildings, is those fears from students are definitely there, that fear of failure. Yeah,
I think, so a couple of different, so just to answer the two bits, we are acutely aware that these interpersonal skills are not where they should be in terms of the students. So part of the curriculum uplift that we have done is about taking out written assessments and putting in much more demonstrations. So oral presentations, role plays. So in at least 3 of the first topics that they do before they go on first placement, they have to be able to demonstrate that they can actually do an engagement session and a minute, like a micro sort of assessment process. So we're building in more and more of that as hurdles. So they have to actually pass that before they can go on to the next topic, or the next placement. And for some students, they will fail that and they will have to do it again.
I think that's really good, because part of our program we've had to move more towards that. So doing a lot of exercises within group supervisions around that, just building that confidence.
Thanks for that. And then the kind of second point about the note taking is a bit more contentious, I think, in some respects, because some services are moving fully to using AI as a mechanism for documentation, and others are still, you know, I saw a practitioner the other day just writing it out in the good old case note, and I'm like, I haven't seen that.
I think though when you're learning though, that's a different concept. When you sort of years experience, that sort of, you understand the context, but when you're actually learning, I think that's when they're just moving towards that rather than actually understand what they're writing. And that's where that difference, that disconnect is.
True. Thank you for that. Do you have something you wanted to say?
Just going back to that plan, I think something that would be really important is, and we've talked about this in our group, is just that validation around that her fears are understandable. She's probably working around all these really competent people, and she needs to know that you're here to make a mistake. That's the whole point of placement, and it's okay. Because if
she doesn't believe you.
No.
And you can't convince her.
No.
So reassurance is lovely.
We still have to say it though.
Well, you have to say it, but then you have to do something to sort of help her reduce her anxieties because they don't
they've
believe
gotta build
you
it up.
because the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think when they do, some students have made mistakes. They have been punished for it.
Yeah.
So we go, it's all right. There's no wrong answer. You
Yeah.
can make as many mistakes as you want, and then we go, no, you can't.
That's not a mistake. That's okay.
Except
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
That one was a bit too much. Yes.
Yeah, but it's okay. Like teaching her to say, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm just going to pop you on hold. Talking around those kind of mistakes.
My
and role
preference
modelling.
is that she wasn't in that predicament in the first place.
Yeah,
So I would
yeah.
be like, drag that right back.
Yeah.
To however much preparation that student needs. Then how do we build that in? Not so it's dependent on you or whoever else, that they can actually self-direct that process.
Yeah.
And then come to you to say, how am I going now?
Yeah.
Or here, I recorded myself 3 weeks ago and now I've recorded myself now. I actually sound better.
Yeah.
Here's the concrete evidence. No, I think I'm better than I was 3 weeks ago because no one's memory is reliable.
Yeah.
So I really want us to find ways to support the students to be better at self-determining their own learning needs. We just can't, we have to teach them how to fish. So that's what I'm really sort of keen to work with you on. You got to go? It's all right. No, it's okay. What time are we finishing? We're finishing at 2:45? Oh, 4 o'clock. Okay, what other things would people be doing to help develop an action-orientated plan with Sarah? Yes, go ahead.
We talked about finding tasks that there's a really high chance she's going to succeed. So just building the confidence by scaffolding those tasks out and saying, okay, we really know this is her strength, so let's build a task based in that and let's work on that for a bit, and just to build that confidence that, yep, I'm getting this right, I'm doing this well, and lots of feedback on that too.
Yeah, great. And I think another good idea is to do those low stakes, high success tasks, but build in some of the more challenging ones and the more extra challenging ones in increments. But don't wait to they're never going to get to that level of confidence where they're really ready to do it. There's always going to be apprehension or a slight degree of anxiety, but orientating them to understanding that that's part of learning and that you can feel a bit anxious, but you've done all this prep, you've done all this rehearsal. And if you could do, and think about other things, ask them what they need. Is there another way we could do this that would help you or support you to do this process? Yeah. Because you don't have to come up with all the answers. We don't know what students' needs. They know what they need better than we do. Yep. Where's our mic gone? Just here in the middle here.
Also, I was just thinking on the phone, and yes, we've talked about how maybe that was too much too soon, but clients can also be extremely critical,
unpredictable,
very short tempers, and so that's another variable to consider. And I wondered, and I take into account what you've said about, we have to teach them to fish, but maybe having a staff member there to save the day, for a little bit.
Yes.
And also the confidence to say, that's not okay, you cannot speak like that to me, of a client, and end the call, give them warnings, then end the call if they continue, and have permission from your whoever is in your team.
Yes, I think that's really important. I think having, sitting alongside them saying, if you really need, I'm here. And also, if they make the call and say, hi, I'm sitting here with my supervisor, or I'm sitting here with my colleague, such and such, we're just calling to check. So there's kind of a co-working process rather than I'm not going to say anything, I'll just sit here. And then when it goes pear-shaped, you step in. We don't want to be rescuing them. We want to be equipping them to navigate and almost doing some of those rehearsals. What happens if someone's really rude? What happens if someone's, shouting, I can't understand you down the phone? How do we respond to that? So, again, rehearsing those difficult moments so if they do happen, they're not surprised or, or shocking or just unsettling for the student. Yeah. What else? Anyone come up with some other stuff around a plan?
assessment.
Yeah.
So that self-care plan, but
Yeah.
doing one thing every day that's going to support that as well, because that's around that long-term sustainability and working out how to regulate and how to be present in that sensory regulation. Yeah.
Yeah, I think helping students recognise that they do need to look after themselves, but I also think it's really fundamental that we check in on what that's going to look like for each student, because that's going to look really different. And so I really don't want us to be prescribing things like practicing mindfulness or, you know, doing relaxation, or I really want to step away from that and ask, because part of the work of asking a student to do their own self-care plan is thinking about going and looking at all of the other things that you can do. You know, it might be that it's, you know, going to the, you know, it can be, there's so many things it could be. It's in terms of the student coming up with that, I think it's really critical that we don't keep giving them too many things, but we say, why don't you go look for some things that, you know, if music is your thing, or art is your thing, or cooking is your thing, you know, what sort of things can you do that give you that, you step out of the day that was and step into a kind of bit more of a space that's, you know, more comfortable for you. Any other ideas about an action-orientated plan? So has anyone done anything that's been particularly... Oh, okay, sorry. I'm talking on Travis's time now.
Sorry, Paula. We've got another...
Oh, sorry. Last question, and then Travis, do you want to come up? Yeah. I'm going to hand over to Travis in a minute because I'll just keep babbling on.
I'll be really quick. So I think it's really paramount to have the student participate in the actual planning of something. So you might table a task, whether that's small, whether it's a simple to begin with or more complex, and ask the student, give them the opportunity to actually talk about how they might actually plan that, and then collaborate with them in terms of what expectations might be around that, so that you can best support how they think about it, but also have the opportunity to collaborate and learn about what other things they might yet not know.
Yes, and I think, again, generally my approach is to ask the student if they'd like me to suggest something, or would you like to come up with something together, or do you have something in mind? So this idea that they are you're giving them choice for one thing, but then, you can kind of work with them to sort of decide how that's going to look, make it quite, you know, in terms of the action-orientated, for me, it's about behavioural goals, like what are you going to do, you know, when are you going to do it, what's it going to look like? And again, I'd encourage using as much kind of recording of things as possible, like on a digital recorder, because they won't remember where they were at the beginning versus where they got to at the end, and it's just such an important concrete piece of evidence of the progress that they've made. And I think that's just really, it's reinforcing for them that they've come, you know, as far as they've come. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Paula. I won't take a lot of time. So that's a very rich and important conversation. So I'm happy for that to have as much time as it needs to. Hi, everybody. My name is Travis. I'm a graduate career readiness consultant here at the university and recently joined the team and had the pleasure of working with this fantastic team and with our students and doing some particular work with our international students to help better prepare them so they come out informed and ready to work in your organisations. And part of that includes some tailored preparation for placement initiatives that we run through our intensive topics in non-semester. And we're particularly focusing the attention towards international students and helping arm them where there may be some gaps. So we offer 2-day workshops when it comes to these placement essentials with our students. And in the first day, we're doing a lot of dedicated effort, going through some of the content that we went through today, but in a different shape and form for the students, in getting them really understanding the Australian context and professionalism and what that looks like, looking at things like confidentiality, initiative, unpacking AI, its appropriateness, when and when not to use it, ethics, but then also looking at the social work code of ethics and the charters and things like that, but also taking the time to hear from students and help incorporate their own lived experience and knowledge into what they're bringing forward into their placement experiences. And that lends to the second day when we're working with them on their placement interviews. So hopefully when they've come out for their placement interviews with you, you've seen a bit of a shift and a bit of a change. We're doing dedicated effort, spending time with them, developing their practice in how they better articulate who they are and the value that they bring to your organisation and the clients that they work with. We're really trying to unpack that idea of maybe I'm here for a visa because I see social work as a visa pathway. No, I want to be a social worker. Why do you want to be a social worker? What does that mean to you? Own it, taking that step forward in really leaning into the profession and wanting to make a difference in the world, in Australia, in our organisations and with the clients we're working with. So we get them to do some research of the organisation, so hopefully that's been coming through as well. They're having a better understanding of your organisation, what you offer the clientele that you work with, your aims and focus, so that they can better align their values with your own. Or if there's a little bit of conflict there, they can have really professional conversations with you around that as well. We do mock interview practice as well. So this is another way that we're helping out build up their English language capacity in a formal setting, well, informal setting, with their peers. We've done it with academics and with staff before, but most recently we've done it with students working with each other, working on the interview practice. And that includes domestic students, not just international. So our international students are learning quite a lot from our domestic students on how they articulate their thoughts, their values, their experiences for interview, but obviously that translates as well into how they will relate with your clients in your various organisations and other simulations as well. And that's something that we're building upon. We do offer ongoing support to our students through the university as well. So we have a huge range of services that the students can access whilst they're students here at the uni, but they can still access them while they're out on placement. And we'd strongly encourage you to work with them and to encourage them to lean on those services where and if they're appropriate, as well as whatever you're offering within your organisation and you're looking at building in the placement offering that you do for our students. So our work integrated learning team work very closely with our students in trying to match them as best as possible with their placements and support them with their client compliance and all their documentation and everything, and working closely with you to set up those matches. We have our student success and wellbeing advisory team, which Mel is a key part of. Mel, do you want to share a little bit about SWA briefly, or your role? Yeah.
Hi everyone. So I'm the Student Success and Wellbeing Advisor for this college, and so I support students throughout their study and help them to be successful. Just by way of background, I'm also a social work graduate from Flinders, so I understand that journey and also previously worked in the international team, so I kind of understand the international student journey as well. But yeah, I work with a lot of the social work students I work with are on placement. So if there's ever a time where you feel like they need a bit of extra support, they should know this, but if you also want to help them book in, just search Student Success and Wellbeing and I'll pop up and they can book in a meeting with me, and I can meet them multiple times throughout placement as well. So it's just that extra bit of support for them. And it can be all different things that come up. Often in these situations, something personal might happen as well, whether on placement or they're balancing their study load at the same time, all of those type of things. So yeah, just an extra level of support for them to be successful while they're on placement.
Thanks, Mel. And then we have ISS, which is Cassie and Peng. As you've heard, it's not just students crying in the room. It's offering some great support that encompasses and wraps around our international students with that more tailored understanding of the cohort and their needs, which ties in well with Mel's work as well. So we work very much as a team to holistically offer support to our students to make sure that they're successful through their placements with you guys, but also what's happening outside for them as well. Oasis offer wellbeing support at the university and a lot of cultural support as well. We have FUSA, which is our Flinders Uni Student Association, which do a lot of the fun stuff, sports and clubs and different direct interest groups. Counselling and disability, they're the ones who administer the access plans and work closely with students to make sure that they have the support that they need, depending on their own personal circumstances. In my role as a graduate career readiness consultant, I do offer consults to students. So if you do find that you're having a student that maybe might have a skill lapse, or if you feel